Our focus today is on the inescapable truth behind the video, titled 5 Reasons Avoidants Can't Get Over You, no matter what they say. Whether you're the one grappling with an avoidant, or you're the avoidant yourself, this discussion may just open a few hidden doors in your psyche. So, if you're a curious mind, and I suspect you are, then do allow me to lead you down this curiously winding path. First and foremost, let us talk about what is known as the broken bone theory. You see, there's a rather marvelous book out there called Attached, by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. In its pages, starting around the pivotal discussions near page 209, they delve into the discovery that our brains can react to romantic breakups very much as though we have physically broken a bone. Let that sink in for a moment. The same areas that light up when we fracture a limb also illuminate when a vital attachment figure, a partner, walks out of our life. How easily we dismiss heartbreak as just feelings, when in reality, it's as if the body, in all its primal wisdom, is telling us, ouch, you've been truly injured. With avoidance, however, there's a fascinating twist. While an anxious individual will feel that fractured limb the moment their partner departs, the avoidant has a delayed reaction. They've become masters at suppressing painful emotions. It's what keeps them seemingly aloof, supremely confident, or coolly distant after a breakup. Yet their relief is only temporary. Sooner or later, the numbness fades, and that dormant ache begins to stir in the subconscious. Then, as if directed by some unseen composer, they recall the so-called peak moments with you. Those shared laughs, stolen kisses, or hushed confessions at 2 a.m. In the blink of an eye, all the fights, tears, and disagreements vanish from their memory. They find themselves caught in a nostalgic tangle. Ironically, it's at this very juncture, when they've had enough distance and solitude, that the broken bone starts to hurt. Now, the question arises, why would this cause them not to get over you? Well, do remember that an avoidant pairs up with an anxious type more often than not. The anxious partner struggles to give them space. A phone call here, a message there, any attempt to force resolution. Without the discipline to let the avoidant truly experience the pang of absence, that bone never properly breaks, so it never truly heals. If you keep chasing them, you're unintentionally numbing their ability to feel that delayed pain. They remain in stasis, convinced that they've left the relationship behind, but never actually stepping beyond the threshold of emotional independence. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how the broken bone theory leads to a lingering connection that never fully dissolves. Let us move, swiftly yet thoughtfully, to our second reason. Their biochemistry keeps them hooked on the dopamine you provided. I spotted this fascinating insight in a viewer's comment. The gist is that romantic attraction involves a cocktail of chemicals: oxytocin, GABA, vasopressin, serotonin, and that mischievous ringmaster dopamine. But there's a catch. Avoidants tend to recoil from the cuddly sensation of oxytocin because it also triggers cortisol, our stress hormone. Hence they run the moment things get too close. The paradox is that they still crave the spike of dopamine, that heady rush of novelty, excitement, validation, whatever feeds their sense of autonomy and chase. Over time, you become the source of that dopamine high. The cycle, repeated enough, carves a deep groove in their neural pathways. When they separate from you, it's like quitting a favored drug. Another person might suffice momentarily for that dopamine fix, but ironically, the recipe your presence created, your unique mannerisms, your laughter, your idiosyncrasies, can't be perfectly replicated elsewhere. So even as they pursue new distractions or new relationships, they can't completely eradicate the imprint of the dopamine-laced bond you once had. You become, in short, a tantalizing what if The human brain doesn't always let go of those experiences that once delivered such lovely jolts of feel-good chemistry. And if the next partner doesn't measure up or stimulate them in the precise ways you did, well, let's just say you'll pop up in their mind again with surprising vividity. This takes us to our third reason, the Frankenstein X. You may have heard of the Phantom X phenomenon, but I assure you it's about more than a singular exalted figure from an avoidance past. Instead, many avoidants compile the best parts of all their exes, stitching together an impossible ideal, a metaphorical Frankenstein X. Perhaps you were the clever one, with quick wit and a compassionate heart. Another ex was the free-spirited traveler. Yet another was always impeccably calm under pressure. All these shining attributes merge into one hypothetical imaginary partner. No living, breathing human can match that patchwork perfection. But it resides in the avoidance memory and is resurrected whenever they feel pangs of loneliness or a sense that something crucial is missing. Here is where you linger. You might not occupy the spotlight in the Frankenstein X's form, but some facet of you is in the tapestry. Do they recall your tenderness with a certain nostalgia? Do they juxtapose your hilarious sense of humor with another ex's spontaneity? Does your empathetic way of listening resurface whenever they feel misunderstood by their current companion? Each recollection is woven together in their mind. Thus, the real you is never completely abandoned. A part of you, a spirit of sorts, remains alive in that intangible ideal. An avoidant person might go gallivanting through multiple relationships, chasing the next new spark, but they are also quite literally running from the fact that no one can be the entire past mosaic. In that sense, they never let you go. Now let's consider the fourth reason. If you saw them without their cloak. One might call this phenomenon the magician's cloak, the persona an avoidant displays to the world, covering up the raw, vulnerable self that yearns for connection while fearing it simultaneously. Every so often, though, the cloak comes off. Perhaps you've shared one of those hushed, late-night confessions, an insight into childhood regrets, a freshly exposed wound they've never dared articulate before. Those moments possess a spellbinding magnitude, because believe it or not, in those seconds they allow themselves to be seen. Like the scene in 500 Days of Summer, where the free-spirited summer peels back a layer for Tom, our avoidant does it for you, albeit briefly. Even a fleeting unveiling can lodge itself into their memory, precisely because it's so atypical and terrifying. They'll say, "I've never told anyone else that." And suddenly the air in the room changes. There's weight, there's an electric hush, and then the cloak is back on. Yet that memory doesn't simply evaporate. The avoidant can never fully forget the person who glimpsed that deeper chamber of their heart. So, even when they walk away, whistling a merry tune of carefree independence, the knowledge that you once witnessed their genuine self will stay tucked in some recess of their mind. Finally, we arrive at our fifth reason, the emotional time capsule effect. Avoidants compartmentalize feelings as neatly as one stashes away old photographs. They don't dismiss emotions. They merely pack them away for a later date. In psychology, we have something called state-dependent memory. If you experience an event in a certain emotional or mental state, you're more likely to recall that event when you re-enter the same state. Now, consider the cyclical pattern of avoidance, sometimes called the death wheel. They want someone, they find someone, they enjoy the honeymoon, they find reasons to leave, they break it off, then they feel lonely. They wonder why they can't find the one, and before long, they're craving someone again, and the cycle spins on. Every time they enter that lonely or "I want someone to love me" phase, they recapture the feelings they had in a previous iteration. And lo and behold, you, who once satisfied that craving, come floating back into consciousness. Your memory is locked in a little time capsule that cracks open whenever those familiar emotions bubble up. They need not be consciously obsessed with you daily. No. It can be a soft, subtle cameo in their mind. But once that cameo appears, it's enough to remind them, I never quite resolved that. Or no one else has made me feel that particular brand of excitement. Another cycle, another swirl of recollection, another nudge from the subconscious. You remain a ghost on the periphery, persistent because the dynamic never truly concluded. When you stitch together all 5 of these reasons, you get an image as rich as any tapestry from centuries past. Avoidants are not by nature void of emotion. They're simply experts at tucking it away, deferring it to another time, or unleashing it in a paradoxical rush long after the breakup. They're biologically and psychologically intertwined with you in ways both subtle and overt. They'll chase a fleeting high, piece you into a quilt of phantom traits. Remember you when they're in that same emotional place. Recall you whenever their emotional fortress cracks open in a moment of honest nakedness. These 5 principles paint a vivid portrait of why avoidants can't get over you, no matter what they say. They might insist they're fine, that they've moved on. But the deeper truth is far more nuanced indeed. And here's the rub. Knowing all this doesn't guarantee you'll reconcile. It doesn't mean they'll come thundering back, arms open, with fresh wisdom. It just means you now have a key to understanding the invisible strings that bind them to memories of you. After all, it's up to each person to decide if they want to remain on that perpetual merry-go-round or step off gently onto solid ground. Still, it can be illuminating to recognize the subtle hold you might have on their heart, long after you've both seemingly gone your separate ways. And if you're the avoidant listening in, reflect on the intricacies of your emotional machinery. See if perhaps you too have a silent corridor in your mind where a memory lingers, a memory wearing a part of that cloak you once lowered. So, there it is. 5 reasons. Avoidants can't get over you, no matter what they say. Magnificent, don't you think? The interplay of biology and psychology, the twist of memory and vulnerability, the forging of intangible bonds that echo long after we say goodbye. It's a testament to the splendid complexity of the human condition and a gentle reminder that even as we break away from one another, little pieces of our shared stories continue to glow in the dim corners of our recollections.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.